Thank you very much, Gabriel.
I now call on Deputy Simon Harris.
Thank you, Gerlach. I'm delighted to have
Is
an
the Deputy
opportunity to.
proposing to share his time?
Oh, I'm sharing time with Deputies Phelan and Corcoran Kennedy, I think.
Agreed?
I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak on the 31st Amendment to the Constitution Bill before the House today, a bill which will provide for a children's referendum to be held and for a new article to be inserted into our Constitution recognising the rights of children in our country. I want to commend Minister Fitzgerald for her tireless and determined work in making this referendum a reality and in keeping it a political priority. In a time when we all clearly know that the economy dominates political, media and public debate, it would have been very easy to see the issue of child protection and a referendum on this issue slide down the political agenda. It's a credit to you, Minister, and to this government that this has not happened and that you have brought us as a nation to this moment where people will shortly have an opportunity to cast their ballots on this very important issue. I've genuinely enjoyed following the debate in this House over the course of the week. I think it's been one of maybe the more interesting and substantive debates that I've heard in this House in my 18 months here. It's been a testament, I think, to how good this institution and this House can be when political parties of all sides park our differences and make constructive and substantive suggestions. And I suppose the only regret, Cahirlock, is unfortunately when that happens, there seems to be a lack of media interest in it. And I think the media really have to re-examine that issue. Just because there isn't argy-bargy and Punch and Judy doesn't make what happens in this House newsworthy. And I think that's important to put on the record of the House. In the time available to me now, I'd like to focus on 3 points relating to the forthcoming children's referendum. Firstly, I think it's important to note that whilst child protection issues are ongoing, there's no doubt that they're very much an issue for modern Ireland. This referendum also provides a nod to our history and sends a message to those who were failed as children by our state, by its institutions, and indeed by some of its citizens. It takes the collective sense of shame, disgust, anger, repulsion, and frustration, which we as a nation and each of us as individuals felt upon hearing of the failure of this country to protect its children. And it turns those feelings into a statement of intent, into an article in our Constitution where we set out clearly our desire that never again is such failure or neglect tolerated. The national rug under which so much has been swept is being thrown out, and a new Ireland is grappling with its past as it looks to its future. This referendum, in my view, marks the coming of the age of our republic when it comes to protecting vulnerable children. It brings to life, Cahirlock, our words of regret and sorrow with positive action and positive intent. Secondly, and I've heard a lot of comment about this during the course of the debate here over the week, clearly resourcing services is an important part of any political debate and the delivery of any structure. There's no doubt about that. But I do think it's important to not narrow this debate about Ireland's children to simply the issue of funding. One must remember we've come through a period in the last decade of massive economic growth, huge national wealth, and yet we all still heard in our newspapers and in the national media on television screens of vulnerable children being failed and of child protection structures not working. We need a cultural shift and indeed a legal shift in terms of how the state cares for its vulnerable children. No amount of funding could ever rectify the reality that children in Irish law are not treated equally when it comes to adoption. No amount of government spend could in itself ever change our legal system to ensure that the voices of children are heard and considered by our judiciary. As the ad for that credit card company goes, there are some things that money can't buy. And that's what this referendum is about, Cahirlock. It's about our people placing in our supreme guiding legal document an intention to hear children's voices, to support vulnerable children, and to treat all children equally when it comes to adoption. So yes, by all means, let's continue the important political discussion about child-proofing budgets and about funding. But let's also recognise that this referendum solves age-old problems which this country has faced, which no budget in and of itself could ever solve. Thirdly, and importantly, there is no such thing as a perfect wording. I think we have to acknowledge that. I think the Minister has acknowledged that. We need to put that on the record of the House. In my view, and indeed the views of members on all sides of this House, this wording strikes a good balance and achieves what we wish to achieve as a society in relation to protecting and supporting vulnerable children. But I want to echo the call of former Justice Catherine McGuinness and indeed others for people to recognise as they set out to consider this referendum that whilst people need to study and familiarise themselves with the wording, the risk to overparse it needs to be avoided. A bit like the old adage that doctors differ and patients die, similarly, if you put a group of lawyers in a room and give them long enough, diverse views on any piece of legal wording will emerge. So we as citizens, when we set out to consider this issue and to vote, we need to ask ourselves key questions. Does this referendum move our country closer to where we want to be in terms of how we view and value children? Is it an honest and credible effort to act upon the concerns expressed about child protection structures and how we view children in 17 reports and over a period of 2 decades? Will it help ensure that children are listened to when decisions relating to their well-being are being made? And will it end a historic injustice and inequality in terms of how some children are treated by our current adoption structures? If the answer to those questions is yes, and I truly believe it is, then you need to get out on Saturday the 10th of November and you need to cast your ballot in favour of this amendment. This referendum and our constitution belong to the Irish people, all of the Irish people, not any one sector. And together, by familiarising ourselves with this wording, by getting out and voting, by engaging in the issues, we can advance the issue of child protection in just a few weeks' time.